All right, good afternoon. Welcome to Professor Speaks. My name is Alex Hernandez. This is Dr. Craig Stern. He's president of Pharma Pharmaceutical Consultants and Pro Data Analytics. Today we'll be talking about direct-to-consumer advertising for pharmaceuticals. I recently came across a video called How Americans Got Stuck with Endless Drug Commercials. This was provided by a news organization named Vox. You can find the link in the description below. Anyways, the video got me thinking about our discussion last week with the bill being introduced by mostly Democratic senators called "Improving Access to Affordable Prescription Drugs." Um, it was sorry, excuse me. With drug companies being asked to justify drug costs, they will also have to provide the cost of advertising for their product. So this leads me to my first question. Dr. Stern, drug companies advertising is nothing new. But this type of advertising used to be limited for physicians and other medical professionals. What are some of the reasons for the change to a more direct-to-consumer approach?
Well, you're right. I mean, this has gone back quite a ways. It went back to a legal decision in 1962. It was approved in 1985, and then there was some further allowance for the FDA not to be able to pre-approve these issues. And the question has always been the following: if people are allowed to have advertising, what is the purpose of the advertising? And the original purpose was to advertise disease, to inform people about what a disease was, what the condition looked like, what kind of signs and symptoms, so that they would consider that when they went to their physician, potentially bring that up, that they do have some of these signs and symptoms. So it was about disease. However, the system has changed. It's gone on since 1985, perhaps a bit earlier. And so as a result of that, we're seeing a move from a significant talk about the disease to a significant talk about the drug. And so there has been a move in that respect. And the disease emphasis has taken a second page now to what goes on in disease. Now, other countries have dealt with this. It's not purely a United States phenomenon.
Right.
New Zealand obviously has direct-to-consumer advertising and allows it. It was brought up to the European Union, and 22 out of the 27 countries said no, that they don't want it. So we're dealing with different perspectives on this across the entire world, some saying yes, some saying no.
Okay. Excuse me. One of the main criticisms for the direct-to-consumer advertising, it came from the AMA. It was one of their central arguments for banning direct-to-consumer advertising for pharmaceuticals was these type of advertising leads to a higher cost of drugs. So drug companies will patch on a little extra cost to the cost of drug to account for the amount they spend on advertising. So with that said, would banning direct-to-consumer ads would that help bring down some of the cost of some of these drugs?
Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
The whole issue of direct-to-consumer advertising is to improve usage, is for people to know about the disease, know about the drug, and therefore ask their physician to get a prescription.
Okay.
So the real emphasis here is to increase what's known as utilization, which effectively is the great multiplier.
Right.
If a prescription costs $1,000, it's $1,000 one time. But if you can increase the utilization of that $1,000 drug many tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of times, then that cost goes up. Now, is the cost of the advertising a major cost of the pharmaceutical? And the answer is no one knows, because it's not itemized in what goes on with the cost of development, the cost of distribution, the cost of marketing, etc. So no one knows. But if you take a look at this, you'll see that the cost of distribution is coming from pharmaceutical companies that today, in today's market, are really marketing firms. In the past, 20 years ago, They were firms that were incubators for developing new drugs.
Uh-huh.
But today, they are buying the companies that are developing the new drugs, or
Right.
they're getting them from labs or groups that are from the federal government, and the federal government is developing it.
Right.
They're picking up the rights to that in their marketing. So they're marketing firms already. So if you talk about the cost of marketing, that's incumbent in what these companies actually do. So the answer is no one really knows, probably not. The cost would continue to increase irrespective, but usage would increase. So the great multiplier would actually work, and the cost of that drug, whatever it is, would be multiplied millions of times.
Right. So just calling back to our last week discussion, if they had to itemize that,
Mhm.
what effect do you think that would have on maybe the drug company themselves, other than the fact that they're already a marketing firm being subsidized mostly by other governments that have developed the drug? So how would forcing them to itemize that affect their ability to maybe bring down the cost of drug or
Well, forcing them to itemize would have a much bigger effect than direct-to-consumer advertising.
right?
Direct-to-consumer advertising is effectively, if you take the con side, it's about exposing the drug to a significant amount of marketing appeal for people who want it. And there's a significant number of studies that says that physicians are being asked about the drug, and more often than not, they get the drug that they're asking for.
Right.
Interestingly, direct-to-consumer advertising in general is about symptomatic kind of problems, not problems like diabetes or hypertension, etc. Clearly that happens.
Uh-huh.
But in the really severe diseases like cancer or HIV/AIDS or that, you see some indicators for the particular drug, but more of it is for allergy, more of it is for gastrointestinal problems like they're constipated, but kind of symptomatic things. And the reason is that these drugs are used by everybody, not
Right.
just by people who have HIV/AIDS, not just by cancer, not just by diabetes or whatever. And so a lot of that emphasis goes to those particular categories, those particular drugs. Would it help? What it would really help is that people want to move towards cost plus kind of thought. They want to move to transparency so they know how
Uh-huh.
much it is. They know that, okay, you deserve to have a profit, but how much of a profit?
Right.
And how much of a profit are you willing to spend to do that? As I think I've indicated in prior conversations, there was a study done, and 63% of the people said we would prefer innovation. So tell the drug companies to innovate versus worrying about the cost of the drug. Well, all of that's interesting. But when it comes to paying, then they're depending on the fact that someone else is paying the bill.
Right.
And as the plans move to more of them paying for copays and things like that, more of the patient is in fact paying the bill. So there is a trend here. It's totally different than what it was when direct-to-consumer advertising started,
Right.
which was really more in the 1980s.
Mhm.
So when you think about that, we have a different population. There's more social networking today, etc.
Sure.
Now people know more about what's happening.
Right. Right. So has direct to consumer advertising had would you say, a positive impact on the healthcare population?
Well, it depends on who you talk to. If you talk to the AMA, the answer is no.
Right.
If you talk to the European Economic Union, the answer is no. If you talk to many of the academics that have weighed in on this topic, the answer is no. If you talk about the pharmaceutical industry, the answer is yes.
Uh-huh.
The question here is that direct-to-consumer advertising was initially directed to disease, not to drug. Now it's directed more to drug with an impact on a given disease.
Right.
And there have been several cases where there's a drug in search of a disease. So they've talked about a new disease that in general has not had a lot of impact or even existed.
Right.
And they've talked about that disease so they could talk about the fact that they have a treatment for it. The real issue here today is different from when this started in the 80s, We now have social networking. We now have all of these ways that people talk to each other. We have advocacy groups on the social networking sites. So now people have significantly more chances to find out about these things. So if we're looking at this as a trend, we're probably looking at this as the fact that today, more people have more access to more information about any disease by going up on the internet and looking for a particular disease, finding out about it. There's all kinds of advertising on it in order to find out what they're seeing and how it's to be treated so that they can talk to their doctor about it. So in some ways, the world has changed from what it originally was to more along that line. The only other statement to be made is that the FDA, who, as I said, in the 60s was told that they couldn't pre-review an ad before it went up. There's also been several legal cases that says that this is an issue where it's freedom of speech. And so there has been a merging of me having a particular opinion and having the right to offer that opinion to advertisement being in the same bucket as my opinion, and therefore I can give it even if there's a commercial motive to it. So all of that has been merged together, but the world has changed. It's moved from direct-to-consumer advertising that was in a magazine or on TV to now on the web and everybody having the capability of looking at it.
Right. And just to clarify, because you mentioned whose opinion, it would affect most, like if the drug companies would say yes, most medical organizations would probably say no. How about the consumer themselves, the patient?
Well, as I say, there haven't been a huge number of studies about the patient as to whether the patient says yes or no. As I indicated, there was this one study where they said we would prefer to look for innovation than to try and control cost.
Right.
But that's innovation, that's not direct-to-consumer advertising.
Right.
There has been some review that said that when you look on the media, of any media, that you see a significant amount of drug advertising that is greater than or equal to what you see in food advertising or advertising about clothes or advertising about whatever. So we really don't know in that regard. I think the only thing that we can say is that different from 1985 to 2017 and beyond, I or you or anybody else can look up on the internet and find out whatever they want to know about a particular disease. If they have symptoms, they can look them up and they can find out what those symptoms may refer to. And they can also find out what kind of therapy that one can use for any particular symptom. So social media has changed the marketplace from what it originally was.
Right. Okay, well, let's eliminate the cost factor for now and just say, how would a direct-to-consumer ban, so we're saying that AMA got their way and banned direct-to-consumer advertising. How would this affect patients and prescribers?
Probably not at all with perspective of what's actually happening. Doctors would probably have less requests for a given product, but they would also probably get a significant amount of suggestions from what the internet says that you're supposed to be used. So it probably wouldn't change anything. So even if there was a ban, it probably wouldn't change the marketplace due to the change in how consumers pick up information and what goes on. We probably wouldn't see much of a change at all.
Interesting. Okay. Well, that's all we have for today. Thank you for joining us this week. Make sure you like and subscribe for more videos. We'll be here every Wednesday at noon. If you have any topic you would like us to discuss, please add them in the comments below. As always, be sure to visit propharmaconsultants.com. We have a free information page. It's called RxInfoX. And see you next time.